Consequences don't have to destroy connection, and discipline doesn't have to destroy love. Too much authoritarianism can create fear, resentment, and emotional distance. Hey there everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you're just seeing my face for the first time, my name is Ndi. On this channel we have lots of fun and we learn a lot. We talk about self-care, self-development, mindset, and motherhood. I know you can already tell what today's topic is about just by the title, so without wasting your time, let's get right into it. There's something I have been thinking about lately, and I think it's a conversation that we need to have as parents. And before I start, let me just say this clearly. I am not against gentle parenting. I actually think that there are beautiful ideas behind it. I believe that children deserve respect. I believe that children should feel safe in their homes. I believe we should be able to correct a child without humiliating them, insulting them, or making them feel like they are fundamentally bad. But I also think that somewhere along the way, we started confusing gentle parenting with permissive parenting, and those two things are not the same. Because there's a difference between saying, I understand that you're angry, but you cannot hit your sister, and saying, you're angry, so it's okay that you hit your sister, let's talk about your feelings. There's a difference between acknowledging a child's emotions and allowing every behavior that comes from those emotions. And I also think that that distinction is incredibly important, because our job as parents is not to simply raise children who feel good. Our job is to raise children who become adults who can function in a real world. And adults who can hear no, adults who can accept disappointments, adults who can regulate themselves, adults who can understand consequences, adults who can respect other people's boundaries, adults who don't collapse every time life doesn't go their way. And so today, I want us to have an honest conversation about gentle parenting, the good, the bad, the potential problems, and how the way we parent today can eventually affect the society we live in tomorrow. Because parenting doesn't happen in isolation. The children we raise eventually become the adults we work with, marry, employ, teach, vote alongside, and build communities with. So let's talk about it. So the question is, what is gentle parenting? First, let's actually define what we are actually talking about. Gentle parenting is generally built around the idea that children are human beings who deserve respect, empathy, connection, age-appropriate understanding. Instead of using fear, shame, physical punishment, or intimidation as a primary tool of discipline, parents try to understand what is happening underneath the child's behavior. So instead of saying, stop crying, you're so dramatic, you might say something like, I can see that you're really upset. I'm here, but we are still leaving the playground. In saying this, the child's feelings are acknowledged, but the boundary still remains. And that is the part I think sometimes we forget. Empathy does not mean boundary disappears. You can understand why your child is angry and still say no. You can validate their disappointment and still enforce consequences. You can apologize to your child when you make a mistake and still be their parent. You don't have to become your child's friend in order to have a healthy relationship with them. I personally do not agree with that. And that's where I think gentle parenting gets misunderstood. So now let's talk about the pros of gentle parenting. Let's start with the positives, right? But there are so many of them. The first one, I would say, it can create emotionally secure children. One of the biggest benefits of respectful parenting is that children can learn that their emotions are safe to experience, right? So a child doesn't have to hide every uncomfortable emotion that they feel. They can say, I'm scared, I'm angry, I'm disappointed, I don't like this. So instead of automatically being punished for having the feelings, they can learn how to process it. That can be incredibly valuable to that child. Because emotions don't disappear simply because we tell children not to express them. A child who is constantly told, stop crying, don't be scared, don't be angry, may in the long run learn to suppress emotions rather than regulate them. And suppression and regulation are not the same thing. Regulation is, I'm angry, but I know what to do with my anger. Suppression is, I'm angry, but I'm not allowed to show it. Gentle parenting, when done properly, can actually help children develop emotional vocabulary and emotional awareness. And I think it's a beautiful thing. The second thing I would say is that it can improve the parent-child relationship. Yes, children are more likely to trust parents who listen to them, not parents who agree with everything they say. There's a difference. Imagine your teenager comes home and says, I hate school. Nobody likes me. Some parents could immediately respond by saying, that's nonsense, you have friends, stop being dramatic. Others might say, something obviously happened today in school. Do you mind if you tell me, or let's talk about it? The second response creates an opening. And when the child knows that they can come to you without immediately being dismissed, they are more likely to tell you what actually is happening in their lives. That becomes especially important as they grow older, because eventually you won't know everything that's happening in your child's life. You won't be standing beside them on the playground. You won't be sitting beside them in the classroom. You won't be with them when someone sends them a disturbing message. You won't be there when they make mistakes. So you want to raise children who think, when something goes wrong, I can call my parent. That relationship truly matters. The third positive for me on gentle parenting is it can break unhealthy circles. For many parents, gentle parenting is also an attempt to do things differently from how they were raised. Maybe you were beaten as a child. Maybe you were constantly shouted at. Maybe your parents never apologized to you, even when it was clearly that they were wrong. Maybe you were told, because I said so, too many times. And that was often the end of every conversation you had with your parents. Now you're trying to create a different environment for your children. And I think that intention is powerful, because every generation has the opportunity to examine what is normal in the generation before it. We can say something like, this happened to me, but it doesn't have to happen to my children. That's growth. But there's also a warning too. Breaking circles doesn't mean removing every form of discipline. It actually means replacing harmful discipline with healthy discipline. Number 4 on the positive is children can learn empathy by experiencing it. Children learn from what we model. If every disappointment in the house is handled through shouting, intimidation, insult, children learn that conflict looks like that. But if they see, I'm upset right now, I'm going to take a moment before I respond, they learn something. So if you tell your child, I shouldn't have shouted at you, I was frustrated, but shouting wasn't the right way to handle it, you are teaching that child accountability. You're also showing them that yes, adults make mistakes too, and it's okay to apologize when you're wrong. But most importantly, you're showing them that apologizing doesn't mean you're weak. But here's where it gets very complicated. Gentle parenting sounds wonderful when you describe it properly. Respect, empathy, connection, communication, emotional regulation. But what happens when you remove these boundaries? That's where things can go wrong, because children need more than emotional validation. They need structure. So now let's talk about the cons when gentle parenting becomes permissive parenting. One of the biggest problems I see in conversations around gentle parenting is the idea that if a child is upset by a boundary, the parent has somehow failed. No. Sometimes your child is going to be upset, and that's okay. Your child doesn't have to be happy in every decision you make. Your job is not to eliminate frustration from your child's life. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Life will frustrate your child. A teacher will say no, a friend will say no, a boss will say no, a partner will say no, a university will reject them, a company may reject their application, someone may break their hearts. They will lose, they will fail, they will be disappointed, they will not always get what they want. And if we've spent 18 years teaching them that discomfort is something adults should immediately remove from them, what happens when they enter the real world? That's a question we should ask ourselves. So children need to learn how to hear no. No is not an abuse, disagreement is not disrespect, a boundary is not rejection, and disappointment is not trauma. Sometimes a child simply needs to hear no, and they are allowed to be upset about it. You don't necessarily have to convince them to understand your decision. You can say, I know you don't like my answer. You can be angry, but the answer is still no. That is boundary, and boundaries are important. Now let's talk about the danger of over-accommodating children. If parents constantly remove obstacles from their children's lives, children may struggle to develop resilience. Let's say your child has a disagreement with a friend. The next thing you do is you immediately call the friend's mother and you start having a conversation in support of your child. At some point, that child isn't learning how to solve problems. They are learning that someone will fix it for me. And that's not gentle parenting. That is over-parenting. Children need opportunities to experience natural consequences in age-appropriate ways. Discipline is not the opposite of love. I think this is one of the biggest conversations we need to have. Discipline and love can exist together. In fact, healthy discipline is part of love. If your child is running into the road, you don't have 20-minute conversations about their feelings before stopping them. You stop them immediately. If your child is hurting another child, you intervene. If your child is stealing, you address it. If your teenager is being disrespectful, you address it. If your child repeatedly breaks rule, there should be consequences. And consequences don't have to mean hitting them. They don't have to mean humiliation. They don't have to mean screaming. They can simply mean you made a choice and this is what happens because of that choice. That's life. Now the question is, what does healthy discipline actually look like? I think the sweet spot is somewhere between authoritarian parenting and permissive parenting. Not because I said so and you don't get to speak. No. And not whatever you want, darling. But there's also, I hear you, I understand you're upset, and the boundary will stand. That's the parenting style I think many of us are actually trying to achieve. Warmth with boundaries, empathy with accountability, freedom with responsibility, connection with authority. Now, how does this affect the society? Let's take this beyond home, because this is where the conversations become really interesting. Every society is made up of individuals, and those individuals were raised somewhere. They learn how to communicate somewhere. They learn how to handle rejection somewhere. They learn how to respond to authority somewhere. They learn how to resolve conflict somewhere. They learn whether rules mattered somewhere. And lots of those lessons started at home. So parenting has a societal impact. If we raise children to understand empathy, we may contribute to adults who are considerate of other people. If we raise children who can communicate their emotions, they may become adults who can handle conflicts without immediately resorting to aggression. If we teach children accountability, we create adults who can say, I was wrong. That's valuable. But there's another side. If we misunderstand gentle parenting as my child should never be uncomfortable, we could potentially raise adults who struggle with discomfort, adults who expect constant accommodation, adults who interpret every criticism as an attack, adults who believe that boundaries are disrespectful, adults who struggle to accept authority, and adults who expect immediate gratification. I don't think that that's what most parents actually want. We have to prepare children for the real world. This is actually one of my parenting philosophy. I don't want to make my children's lives easy. I want to make my children capable, because those are two different things. Making your child's life easy means removing every difficulty. Making your child capable means teaching them how to deal with difficulty. If my child is struggling with something, I don't want to always solve it for them. Sometimes I want to sit beside them and say, okay, what do you think we should do? Because eventually they will have to answer that question without me. Children are not supposed to control the house. Another thing I think we've gotten wrong in the idea of respecting children means allowing them to have equal authority over every family decision. No. Children deserve respect, but parents are still parents. There are things that my children can decide. There are things that we decide together, and there are things that I decide because I am the adult responsible for them. That's not oppression, that's parenting. Imagine a child saying, I don't want to go to school, and the parent says, okay, let's talk about why. That's healthy. But if a child says, I don't want to go, and the parent says, okay, every single time, now the parent is allowing that child make a decision that they are not mentally prepared to make. Children need choices, but they also need leadership. Gentle parenting doesn't mean gentle consequences. This is another important distinction. You can calmly say, because you broke the rule, you won't have access to your tablet tonight. You don't have to scream it, you don't have to threaten, you don't have to insult them, you can simply enforce it. And if your child starts crying, you can comfort them. You can say, I know you're disappointed, and still keep the consequences. That's emotional maturity. You're teaching them that your feelings matter, but your feelings don't control every outcome. And that's an incredibly important life lesson. What do I think we should be aiming for when it comes to gentle parenting? I don't think the goal should be raising children who never cry. I don't think the goal should be raising children who never experience rejection. I don't think the goal should be raising children who never get frustrated. I don't think the goal should even be raising children who are always happy. The goal should be raising children who are equipped to experience disappointment, equipped to apologize, equipped to accept correction, equipped to respect other people, equipped to manage their anger, equipped to hear no, equipped to take responsibility, equipped to work hard, equipped to experience failure without believing their life is over, equipped to understand that the world doesn't revolve around them, and most importantly, equipped to understand that they can experience difficult emotions without being destroyed by them. Now let's talk about the balance. How do we balance gentle parenting and permissive parenting? So if you're a parent wondering, am I too strict or am I too gentle? Maybe the question is, am I teaching my child both emotional safety and personal responsibility? Can your child come to you when they are hurting, but can they also accept correction from you? Can they tell you they are angry, but can they also understand that anger doesn't give them permission to hurt someone? Can they disagree with you, but can they still respect the boundary? Can they make mistakes, but can they also take responsibility for those mistakes? Can they express themselves, but can they also listen? That's the balance. So my final thought is this. I think parenting is one of those things where extremes rarely work. Too much authoritarianism can create fear, resentment, and emotional distance. And too much permissiveness can create entitlement, poor boundaries, difficulty dealing with frustrations. And somewhere in the middle is this beautiful place where children can feel deeply loved while still understanding that the world has expectations. You can say I love you and no in the same sentence. You can say I understand you're angry, you still cannot hit your brother. You can say I'm sorry I shouted, and you're still responsible for what you did. You can hug your child even after giving consequence, because consequences don't have to destroy connection and discipline doesn't have to destroy love. I think that's the part where we need to remember. Our children aren't just going to remain our children forever. They're going to become adults, they're going to enter workplaces, they're going to become friends, partners, parents, leaders, colleagues, neighbors, and citizens. And the qualities we teach them at home will eventually walk out of the home and into the society one day. So yes, let's raise emotionally intelligent children. Let's raise children who feel safe. Let's raise children who know that they are loved. Let's raise children who are not afraid to talk to us. But let's also raise children who understand responsibility. Let's raise children who can hear no. Let's raise children who can handle disappointment. Let's raise children who know that actions have consequences. Let's raise children who understand their feelings are valid, but their feelings don't give permission to hurt other people. Because ultimately, gentle parenting should not be about creating a world where children never experience discomfort. It should be about giving them emotional tools to navigate discomfort without losing themselves. And perhaps that's the real goal, not raising children who think the world will always be gentle with them, but raising children who are kind, resilient, strong enough to navigate a world that won't always be. And I think that's a much more powerful gift we can give them. That's the end of my video today. I hope we've learned something because I am constantly learning. And also, I'd love to hear your thoughts on gentle parenting and permissive parenting. So do well to drop it in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video as much as I did, don't forget to give it a like. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.